12 vegetables that thrive in complete shade, perfect for small spaces. Most people believe vegetables need full, blazing sunlight all day long. And because of that belief, a lot of small spaces, shaded yards, and tucked away corners never get used at all. But here's the truth most gardening advice doesn't tell you. Some vegetables don't just tolerate shade, they actually prefer it. In fact, too much sun and heat can make many leafy vegetables bolt, turn bitter, or stop producing altogether. Shade keeps them cooler, slower growing, and most importantly, tastier and more productive for longer. So if your space is shaded by trees, buildings, fences, or walls, don't give up on growing your own food. Today, I'm going to show you 12 vegetables that thrive in complete or near complete shade, making them perfect for small spaces, patios, balconies, and dark corners of your yard. But before we dive in, click the subscribe button, like, comment, and share, because I will be sharing more helpful tips for your garden tomorrow. Make sure you stick around because number 9 grows even in the darkest spots, and at the end, I'll share a simple bonus tip that can dramatically increase how much light your shaded garden gets without moving anything. Why shade isn't the enemy. Before we jump into the list, let's clear something up. When we say shade, we don't mean total pitch-black darkness like a basement. We're talking about areas that get 1 to 4 hours of direct sun, or mostly bright indirect light, or dappled light filtered through trees or buildings. These are the kinds of places where fruiting crops like tomatoes and peppers struggle, but leafy greens and cool season vegetables absolutely shine. Shade keeps soil cooler, reduces water stress, and slows down bolting. That means sweeter leaves, more tender texture, longer harvest periods, less bitterness, less stress on your plants. In other words, better food for longer in less than perfect spaces. Number 1, lettuce. If there's one vegetable that truly loves shade, it's lettuce. In full sun, especially in warm weather, lettuce bolts fast. It shoots up a flower stalk, turns bitter, and suddenly your salad dreams are over. But in shade, lettuce stays cool, calm, and productive. With just 2 to 3 hours of sunlight a day, or even bright indirect light, lettuce will keep producing tender, sweet leaves for weeks longer than sun-grown plants. Why lettuce thrives in shade. Cooler temperatures prevent bolting, leaves stay softer and less bitter, soil stays moist longer, harvest window is much longer. Best types for shade. Loose leaf varieties like Red Sales, Simpson Elite, and Salad Bowl, butterhead types like Butter Crunch and Tom Thumb, even romaine works, though heads may stay a bit smaller. How to grow it. Sow seeds about 1/8 inch deep, thin seedlings to 8 to 12 inches apart or closer for baby greens. Keep soil lightly moist. Harvest outer leaves and let the center keep growing. Pro tip. In shady spots, lettuce can often keep producing well into summer, long after sun-grown lettuce has given up. That means more salads for more months from the same space. Number 2, spinach. Spinach and heat are not friends. In hot, sunny conditions, spinach bolts fast and turns tough and bitter. But give it shade and suddenly it becomes one of the most reliable, productive greens you can grow. Spinach only needs about 2 to 3 hours of direct light and does beautifully with bright, indirect light the rest of the day. Why spinach loves shade. Shade keeps it cool and delays bolting. Leaves stay tender and sweet. Plants stay productive much longer. Less water stress and slower, steadier growth. Good varieties for shade. Bloomsdale long-standing, great flavor, crinkled leaves. Smooth leaf types like Corvair or Regiment. How to grow it. Plant seeds about 1/2 inch deep, thin to 4 to 6 inches apart or closer for baby greens. Keep soil lightly moist. Harvest outer leaves first to extend production. In shaded areas, spring spinach can keep producing into early summer, and fall spinach can push well into cool weather. For small spaces, that's a huge return on a tiny patch of soil. Number 3, arugula. Arugula is one of those greens that sounds tough and spicy, but in shade, it becomes beautifully tender and balanced. In full sun and heat, arugula turns aggressively spicy and bolts almost immediately. In shade, it grows slower, stays leafy, and keeps that pleasant, peppery bite without becoming overpowering. Arugula only needs 2 to 3 hours of sun and does great in partial to deep shade. Why arugula thrives in shade. Slower growth equals better flavor. Delayed bolting, leaves stay tender. Longer harvest window. Types that work well: standard cultivated arugula, wild arugula, even more shade tolerant and slower to bolt. How to grow it: sow seeds about 1/4 inch deep, thin to 4 inches apart, or sow thickly for baby greens. Start harvesting when leaves are 3 to 4 inches long. Cut and come again plants will regrow for multiple harvests. Arugula is fast, forgiving, and perfect for filling small, shady gaps in your garden or containers. If you're already thinking, wait, I can actually grow food in my shady space, you're exactly who this video is for. If this is helping you rethink your garden, give it a like and subscribe for more small space, low stress gardening tips that actually work in real life conditions, not just perfect sunny gardens. All right, let's keep going. Number 4, kale. Kale might look tough, and honestly, it kind of is, but it's also surprisingly happy in shade. While kale can grow in full sun, it only really needs about 3 to 4 hours of direct light to produce a solid harvest. In shade, kale grows a bit slower, but that's actually a good thing. Slower growth means more tender leaves, better texture, less bitterness, more consistent harvests. Why kale does well in shade? It's a cool season crop by nature. Shade prevents heat stress. Leaves stay softer and less fibrous. Plants stay productive longer into warm weather. Great varieties for shady spots: lacinato, also called dinosaur or Tuscan kale; red Russian, very tolerant of low light and adds beautiful color. Curly types like winter boar also work, just a bit slower. How to grow it: sow seeds about 1/4 inch deep, thin to 12 to 18 inches apart, and harvest outer leaves first and let the center keep growing. One plant can produce for months with regular picking. In shaded gardens, kale often ends up more tender and more usable than kale grown in harsh, full sun. We've already covered 4 vegetables that prove something important. You do not need full sun to grow real food. You just need the right plants for the right light. And we're only getting started. So far, you've seen that shade doesn't mean nothing grows here. It just means you have to grow the right crops. We've already covered lettuce, spinach, arugula, and kale, 4 vegetables that actually perform better when they're protected from harsh sun and heat. Now let's move into the next group. These are some of the most productive, most reliable, and most underrated vegetables for shady spaces. And when we get to number 9, you'll see one that can produce even when your garden feels almost too dark to grow anything at all. Number 5, Swiss chard. Swiss chard is one of the most beautiful and most forgiving vegetables you can grow. It's closely related to beets, and like its cousin, it doesn't mind less than perfect conditions. In fact, Swiss chard grows very well with just 3 to 4 hours of direct sunlight, and often produces more tender leaves and stems in shade than in full sun. Why Swiss chard loves shade? Cooler conditions reduce toughness and bitterness. Leaves stay softer and more flexible. Plants suffer less from heat stress. Harvest period is longer and more consistent. Great varieties for shady spaces. Bright lights with multicolored stems, red, yellow, pink, orange, white. Foothook giant with classic white stems and big dark green leaves. And ruby red or rhubarb chard for deep red stems. How to grow it: sow seeds about 1/2 inch deep. Thin plants to 8 to 12 inches apart for full-size plants. Or sow closer and harvest as baby greens. Most varieties are ready in 30 to 50 days, even in shade. Because they grow so quickly, Swiss chard is perfect for filling gaps in shaded beds or containers and keeping your harvest going all season. Number 6, Asian greens: bok choy, tatsoi, mizuna, and komatsuna. If you want fast-growing, productive, shade-loving vegetables, Asian greens are absolute champions. This group includes vegetables like bok choy, tatsoi, mizuna, komatsuna, and several similar leafy greens. Most of these only need 2 to 4 hours of direct sun and actually bolt quickly if you grow them in full sun during warm weather. Why Asian greens thrive in shade? They're naturally cool season crops. Shade prevents early bolting. Leaves stay tender and mild. They grow fast even in low light. Perfect for succession planting in small spaces. Standout options: baby bok choy varieties like joy choy or Mei King choy, tatsoi, which forms beautiful low rosettes of dark green leaves, and mizuna with feathery leaves that add great texture to salads. How to grow them. Sow seeds about 1/4 inch deep, thin to 4 to 8 inches apart for full-size plants, or sow closer and harvest as baby greens. Most varieties are ready in 30 to 50 days, even in shade. Because they grow so quickly, Asian greens are perfect for filling gaps in shaded beds or containers and keeping your harvest going all season. Before we dive deeper, hit the subscribe button, like, and comment for more helpful garden tips. Number 7. Leaf celery, cutting celery, or Chinese celery. When people think of celery, they usually imagine thick, crunchy stalks, and those are honestly pretty hard to grow. But leaf celery is a different story. Leaf celery is grown for its intensely flavorful leaves and thin stalks, and it's far easier to grow, especially in partial shade. It only needs about 3 to 4 hours of direct light, and actually produces better tasting, more tender leaves in shade than in full sun. Why leaf celery is great for shade. Doesn't need intense light to produce usable harvests. Shade keeps leaves from becoming tough or bitter. Flavor stays strong and aromatic, much less demanding than stalk celery. How to grow it. Sow seeds on the soil surface. They need light to germinate. Keep soil consistently moist. Thin seedlings to about 6 inches apart. Start harvesting outer stalks when plants reach 8 to 10 inches tall. How to use it. Chop leaves into soups and stews. Add to stocks and sauces. Use like a powerful herb rather than a bulky vegetable. In mild climates, leaf celery can even behave like a perennial, giving you repeated harvests from the same plant. Number 8. Sorrel. Sorrel is one of the most underrated shade vegetables out there. It's a perennial leafy green with a bright, lemony, tangy flavor that can completely transform soups, sauces, and salads. And the best part? Sorrel actually prefers shade. It grows well with just 2 to 3 hours of direct sunlight and is perfectly happy in deep dappled shade under trees or beside buildings. Why sorrel thrives in shade? It naturally grows in cooler, shaded environments. Full sun can make it struggle in hot climates. Shade keeps leaves tender and flavorful. Once established, it comes back year after year. Types to look for: French sorrel, garden sorrel. How to grow it. Start from seed or transplants. Sow seeds about 1/4 inch deep. Thin plants to 12 inches apart. Harvest leaves as needed. Remove flower stalks to keep leaf production going. Once you plant sorrel, it can provide years of harvests with very little effort, making it perfect for those forgotten shady corners of your garden. Number 9. Green onions, scallions, the deep shade champion. This is the one I teased earlier, and for good reason. Green onions are one of the most shade-tolerant edible crops you can grow. They can produce usable harvests with as little as 2 hours of direct sunlight, and sometimes even less if they're getting bright, indirect light. Why green onions are amazing for shade. Extremely tolerant of low light, grow in small spaces in containers, regrow after cutting, fast and reliable harvests. Useful in almost every kitchen. Great varieties: evergreen hardy white, Tokyo long white. Most standard scallion varieties do well in shade. How to grow them. You can grow from seed, sets, or even grocery store roots. Sow seeds about 1/4 inch deep. For clump harvesting, thin to 1 inch apart. For bigger individual scallions, thin to 2 to 3 inches apart. Harvest by cutting and let them regrow. You can even take the root ends from store-bought green onions, stick them in soil, and they'll regrow again and again, even in a shady spot. If your garden has a corner that feels almost too dark to bother with, green onions are often the first thing that will prove you wrong. Number 10. Radishes. Radishes are famous for being fast, easy, and beginner-friendly, but most people don't realize they also do very well in partial shade. They only need about 3 to 4 hours of direct sunlight, and in fact, radishes grown away from intense sun and heat often turn out milder, crisper, and less spicy. Why radishes work in shade? Cooler soil prevents them from becoming woody or overly pungent. Shade slows growth just enough to improve texture and flavor. They still mature quickly, even with less light. Great varieties for shady spots: Cherry Belle, French Breakfast, Easter egg mixes. How to grow them. Sow seeds about 1/2 inch deep. Thin seedlings to 2 inches apart. Keep soil consistently moist for best texture. Most radishes are ready in 25 to 35 days, even in partial shade.
Because they grow so fast, radishes are perfect for filling empty spaces between slower growing shade crops or for quick wins in small containers. Number 11, beets for the greens. Now, let's be clear, if you want big, fat beet roots, you'll need more sun. But if you're growing beets for their nutritious, delicious greens, shade works just fine. Beet greens are tender, productive, and very similar to Swiss chard in how you cook and use them. And in partial shade, the leaves stay softer and less stressed by heat. Why beet greens are great for shade? The leaves tolerate low light very well, shade keeps them tender and less bitter, you can harvest continuously, and you get both greens and small baby roots. Best variety for greens, bull's blood, deep red leaves, beautiful and tasty. How to grow them. Sow seeds about a ½ inch deep, thin to 2 to 3 inches apart for greens, harvest outer leaves as needed, or pull young plants whole for baby beets with greens attached. In shady gardens, think of beets as a leaf crop first and a root crop second, and you'll be much happier with the results. Number 12, watercress. This is the ultimate shade lover on the list. Watercress naturally grows along shaded stream banks and wet areas, and it actually struggles in full sun. That makes it perfect for the darkest, dampest corners of your garden or even containers kept consistently moist. Watercress only needs about 1 to 2 hours of direct sunlight and does beautifully in bright indirect light. Why watercress thrives in shade? It prefers cool, moist conditions. Full sun can stress and dry it out. Shade keeps leaves tender and flavorful, and it grows fast and can be harvested repeatedly. How to grow it. Start from seed or from stems rooted in water. Keep soil constantly moist, or grow in a container sitting in a tray of water. Harvest by cutting stems and letting them regrow. Use fresh in salads, sandwiches, or soups for a peppery kick. If you have a spot that's too wet and too shady for almost anything else, watercress might be exactly what you need. Bonus tip, how to get more light in shady gardens. Now, here's a simple trick that can make a huge difference in shaded spaces. Use reflection. Even if you can't move your garden, you can often bounce more light into it. Try this. Use light-colored mulch to reflect light upward. Paint nearby walls or fences white or a light color. Place reflective surfaces like light boards or safe mirrors at the back of beds. Prune trees and shrubs to allow dappled light instead of deep darkness. Remove low branches that block what little light you do get. These small changes can turn a barely growing shady spot into a surprisingly productive garden area. So let's recap what you've learned today. You don't need a sunny, perfect garden to grow food. You don't need a big yard. And you definitely don't need to give up just because your space is shaded. With the right crops like lettuce, spinach, arugula, kale, Swiss chard, Asian greens, leaf celery, sorrel, green onions, radishes, beet greens, and watercress, you can turn shady, small, forgotten spaces into real food-producing gardens. Start small. Pick 2 or 3 of these and try them in that spot you've been ignoring. You might be surprised how much food you can grow where you thought nothing would survive. If you found this helpful, give it a like, subscribe for more practical gardening tips, and check out the other videos where we break down how to grow more food in less space with less stress. And remember, shade isn't the enemy, it's just a different opportunity.